The note in the library book. Part I, The Ordinary Day. The afternoon sun hung low above the campus, spilling amber light across the courtyard as Alina Moraz, a third-year literature student, made her way toward the library. Her bag was heavy with textbooks, her mind heavier still with deadlines and lectures. She had no reason to expect that this day, like so many before it, would bend the course of her life. The campus library was an old building, its stone walls weathered by time, its tall wooden doors groaning faintly each time they opened. Inside, the air carried the faint must of paper and polished oak, the subtle perfume of centuries of thought preserved. Alina liked this place precisely for that reason. It was quieter than her dorm, less chaotic than the city, and in these shelves she often felt the world pause for her. She scanned the aisles, searching for a collection of essays on European romanticism. Her professor's reading list had been merciless, and the stack of volumes she had already checked out filled half her desk. Still, she drifted among the shelves, touching spines as if the books themselves carried secret warmth. Then her hand stopped. A worn green hardcover, slightly crooked on the shelf. The gilded letters on its spine had nearly faded to invisibility. Collected Poems, 1935–1947. It wasn't on her list, but something about it called to her. She slid it free, feeling the brittle crackle of its binding, and let it fall open. Between pages yellowed with age, a folded sheet slipped out and fluttered to the floor. Alina bent down, picked it up, and felt the surprising texture of thick cream paper. Ink, faded but still legible, marked it in looping handwriting that belonged to another time. She glanced around. No one noticed her discovery. Heart quickening, she unfolded it. To whoever finds this. If you are reading, then my words have survived the silence. I do not know who you are, but perhaps you can understand. I loved once, fiercely and impossibly. And because of that love, I lost everything. If you wish to know more, turn to page 214. L. Her breath caught. The letter was brief, but it pulsed with a voice that felt alive, urgent, as though the writer might step from the shadows any moment. Who was L? What did it mean to lose everything? Her fingers trembled as she opened the book again, turning until she reached page 214. There, under a poem titled Winter's Promise, a line had been underlined. Some loves are too heavy for time to carry, yet they echo long after we are gone. A shiver ran across her skin. Part II, The Dilemma. That night, Alina couldn't study. The note haunted her. She laid it on her desk, smoothing its creases, reading the loops of ink over and over until she could almost hear the writer's voice. She debated, should she leave it in the book where it belonged, return it to its silence, respecting whoever had placed it there decades ago, or should she try to find the truth? Her rational mind urged caution. It was, after all, only an old note. People wrote confessions, secrets, even games for strangers to stumble upon. But her heart argued differently. There was pain inside those words and mystery. The next morning, Alina returned to the library, restless. She sought the librarian, an elderly man named Mr. Danilko, who had worked there longer than most professors had been alive. Alina, he greeted kindly, back again so soon. She hesitated, then pulled out the folded note. I found this in one of the poetry books. Do you know anything about it? He adjusted his glasses, peered at the page, and frowned thoughtfully. The handwriting, it seems familiar, though I can't place it. Many students, many hands pass through these shelves. Could it be from one of the old donors? She pressed. Perhaps. We received donations in the 1960s from several families. Sometimes personal things slip into books. I recall once finding a pressed flower, another time a train ticket. But a letter like this, he trailed off, eyes distant. I cannot say. Alina left with more questions than answers. She tucked the note back into her bag, but she knew she would not rest until she uncovered its story. Part II, First Clues. She began with the library's archive. Dusty records cataloged donations, acquisitions, even the names of those who once borrowed certain volumes. After hours of sifting, she found a card from 1971, written in fountain pen. Collected Poems, accession number 5938. donated by the Levchenko family. Her pulse quickened. Could it be Levchenko? The surname was common, but it was something. She opened her laptop and began searching old student directories. The Levchenko name appeared more than once, but one in particular stood out. Lyudmila Levchenko, enrolled in 1946, majoring in literature. Alina whispered the name aloud. Lyudmila. Could this be her mysterious writer? Part IV, flashback through words. That night she dreamt of Lyudmila, not because she knew her, but because the words in the letter painted a shadow of her. Alina imagined a young woman in the 1940s, hair pinned neatly, a notebook always in hand. A woman who fell in love fiercely, impossibly. She dreamt of crowded lecture halls, ration lines after the war, whispered meetings by candlelight, of a love hidden, maybe forbidden, and then loss. When she woke, Alina's pillow was damp with tears. The note was no longer a curiosity. It was a bridge, reaching across decades, pulling her into another life. Part V, the search deepens. The following week, Alina became a regular at the library archives. While her classmates worried about exams, she pursued the ghost of a woman she had never met. Each card catalog, each brittle yearbook page, felt like another thread pulled from a tapestry hidden beneath dust. In the student yearbook of 1947, she finally found her. A sepia photograph, Lyudmila Levchenko, Literature Society. Her eyes, even in faded print, seemed alive, direct, with a spark of quiet defiance. Alina studied the picture until she could almost hear Lyudmila's voice. She noticed something else. Beside Lyudmila's photo was another name, Andrei Holub, president of the Literature Society. He stood tall, smiling, his gaze turned toward the group rather than the camera. Alina's thoughts raced. Could he have been the love? Part VI, a hidden pattern. Days passed, and the investigation consumed her. At night, she copied lines from the old poetry book, trying to piece together meaning. Several pages bore faint pencil marks, words underlined, margins dotted with cryptic initials. On page 142, she noticed the letters AH written in the corner. Her breath caught. Andrei Holub. The realization sent a thrill through her. This wasn't random. Lyudmila had left a trail, carefully woven into the poetry collection. Perhaps she wanted someone, someday, to discover it. Yet one question pressed hardest. Why had she written of love so great, yet of losing everything? Part VII, the visit. Alina decided to trace the Levchenko family. Public records revealed that Lyudmila had lived most of her life in Kiev, working as a translator. But there was no obituary. Could she still be alive? With hesitant fingers, Alina dialed a number she found in a directory. The line rang 3 times before a frail but steady voice answered. Hello. Her heart pounded. Hello, is this the residence of Lyudmila Levchenko? A pause. Yes, who is calling? My name is Alina. I found something that may belong to you. A note in a book. Silence stretched long enough that Alina feared the connection had dropped. Then, softly, the woman replied. You found it. The words felt like the unlocking of a door. Part VII, the first twist. They agreed to meet the next afternoon, at Lyudmila's apartment. The building was old, Soviet-era concrete softened by climbing ivy. Alina's palms sweated as she climbed the stairs, clutching the note like fragile treasure. Lyudmila herself opened the door. Though age had bowed her frame, her eyes were unmistakable, bright, alive, the same gaze from the yearbook photo. Come in, dear, she said warmly. I never thought anyone would ever bring this to me. Inside, the walls were lined with books in several languages, and framed photographs sat carefully on shelves. But one frame stood face down on the mantel. Alina's gaze lingered, and Lyudmila followed it. Slowly, with trembling fingers, the old woman lifted the frame. Inside was a photograph of herself, young, with Andrei Holub. His arm was around her shoulders. Both smiled as though the world was theirs. Lyudmila's voice broke the silence. Andrei was my love, but he disappeared in 1947. They said he was taken by the authorities for his writing, for daring to dream too freely. Her hands tightened on the frame. I searched for him for years. I left those words in the book because I could not carry them anymore. I thought if someone found them, at least the truth would not die. Elena felt the weight of the revelation. This was no simple romance. It was a love crushed by history itself. But Lyudmila wasn't finished. She leaned closer, eyes shimmering. Elena, they told me he vanished, but I believe he left me one last message. And if you have come, perhaps you are meant to help me find it. Part IX, the forgotten drawer. Lyudmila guided Elena to a small oak desk in her living room. Its drawers were cluttered with letters, old pens, and yellowed envelopes tied with string. I kept everything, Lyudmila whispered. Every scrap, every word of his I could save, but I could never bring myself to open this bottom drawer. She pulled it open with effort, revealing a stack of notebooks, their covers cracked with age. On the very top lay a single envelope marked in careful script. For Lyudmila, if I cannot return. Elena's heart pounded as Lyudmila lifted it, hands trembling. Inside was a letter dated March 1947. My dearest Lyuda, if you are reading this, it means I was taken before I could see you again. Do not waste your life searching for me. Promise me you will keep writing, keep breathing words into the world, even if I am gone. Our love cannot survive here, but perhaps it can survive in time. Hide this if you must. And if another soul finds it, then we are remembered. Yours always, Andrei. Tears slipped down Lyudmila's cheeks. Elena sat in silence, overwhelmed. This was not just history, it was living grief, echoing through decades. Part X, the doubt. For days after, Elena carried the story within her like a burden. At lectures, she found herself distracted, thinking of the young lovers torn apart. At night, she reread Andrei's words until they blurred. But something gnawed at her. Why had Lyudmila never shared this? Why leave the note in a book for strangers instead of telling her family, her friends? When she asked, Lyudmila answered softly. Because no one wanted to hear. In those years, speaking his name was dangerous. Later, people told me to forget, but I could not. So I hid it in the one place that had always kept secrets, the library. Elena felt a sting of recognition. She too had secrets she never spoke, the loneliness of studying far from home, the sense of drifting without direction. Perhaps that was why she was drawn to the letter. Part XI, the second twist. One evening, Elena returned to Lyudmila's apartment, bringing pastries from a bakery. The old woman smiled, but her eyes seemed unusually heavy. There is something I never told you, she said. Andrei did not vanish completely. Years later, I received a postcard. No return address, only 3 words. Still with you. She produced the faded card. The handwriting was unmistakably his. Elena's breath caught. So, he might have survived. Lyudmila nodded. I do not know. Perhaps he was exiled. Perhaps he lived under another name, but I never found him. The postcard was the last trace. The revelation struck Elena like lightning. This wasn't merely a tragic ending. It was an unfinished story. Part XII, a mirror in time. Walking back through the campus that night, Elena felt the weight of everything she had learned. Lyudmila had carried love across a lifetime, preserved in paper and silence. And in a strange way, it changed how Elena saw her own life. She realized she had been drifting, attending lectures, completing assignments, but never allowing herself to live fully, to risk loving or losing. The past whispered to her, do not waste your life searching, but do not waste it hiding either. As the library's windows glowed against the night sky, Elena knew she had stepped into someone else's memory, but she had also found her own beginning. Part XII, the archive of silence. Elena's curiosity deepened into resolve. If there was even a chance Andrei had survived, she wanted to know. Lyudmila, too frail to search, encouraged her. So Elena visited the city archives, a gray building that smelled of dust and damp stone. Rows of boxes lined shelves like silent witnesses. She combed through files of political prisoners, deportation lists, faded interrogation records. Hours passed. Finally, she found it. Holub Andrei, arrested 1947. Sentence, 5 years labor camp in Siberia. Her chest tightened. He hadn't simply disappeared, he had been erased. Yet beneath the entry was a faint pencil mark. Released 1952. Status unknown. Elena copied the page with shaking hands. The past was no longer sealed. Part XIV, the truth brought home. When Elena showed Lyudmila the document, the old woman clutched it as though it were holy. Her eyes filled with tears she had carried for decades. So he did return, she whispered. I wasn't mad to believe, but where did he go? She touched the words as though caressing his face. For a long moment, the apartment was filled only with the sound of her quiet sobs. Then, with sudden clarity, Lyudmila looked at Elena. Promise me, you will not let this story die. Even if I do not know the ending, the world should know he lived and that we loved. Elena nodded, her throat tight. I promise. Part XV, the final twist. Weeks later, while browsing a second-hand bookshop, Elena stumbled on a slim volume of poetry published in 1954 under the name A. Horan. She opened it, and her breath caught. The dedication read, For Luda still with you. The style was unmistakably the same as the poems in the old library book, gentle, lyrical, with the same ache between lines. Her heart pounded. Andrei had survived. He had written again under a false name, hiding in plain sight. Elena bought the book and rushed to Lyudmila's apartment. When the old woman saw the dedication, her hands trembled so violently, Elena feared she might drop it. It's him, Lyudmila whispered. All this time he was still writing for me. Part XVI, resolution. That evening, as the sun sank and shadows lengthened, Elena and Lyudmila sat side by side, reading the poems aloud. Each word carried the weight of survival, of love stretched across distance and silence. For Lyudmila, it was the closing of a circle she had waited her entire life to complete. For Elena, it was the opening of a new one. Walking home, Elena felt changed. The letter she had found was no longer just a relic. It was a lesson. That love, though vulnerable to time and history, could endure in memory, in words, in the courage to keep searching. As she passed the library's tall windows, glowing softly against the night, Elena slipped the original note back into the green poetry book. She left it there not as a mystery, but as a beacon for the next soul who might need to be reminded that some loves, even broken by time, never truly end. Epilogue, echoes between pages. The campus library remained as it always was, tall shelves, quiet corridors, the scent of dust and old bindings. Students came and went, their voices hushed, their lives moving quickly. Few noticed the worn green book tucked neatly back into its place. But Elena did. She walked past that shelf often, her gaze lingering on its spine, knowing that within it lay a folded page, a fragment of a love that had once survived war, exile, and silence. Lyudmila passed away the following spring. At her funeral, Elena read aloud one of Andrei's poems, her voice steady though her heart trembled. She watched strangers close their eyes, feeling the words as if they too carried fragments of that long-ago love. Later, Elena returned to the library, to the same wooden desk where she had first opened the book. She sat in the same chair, listening to the hush of pages turning around her, and realized that nothing she studied, no lecture or exam, would ever teach her as much as the letter had. Life, she thought, is not measured by how long it lasts, but by the courage to love and to remember. Somewhere between the ink of forgotten poems and the silence of old paper, she had discovered not only Lyudmila and Andrei's story, but her own beginning. And though no one else might ever find that note, Elena knew it would continue to echo, because words once written are never truly lost. They wait, they endure. Just like love,